Good evening, everyone. My name is Ankur Warikoo. As mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Nearbuy.com. A quick introduction to set the context. Nearbuy is an offline to online or an online to offline, whatever you may call it, company. Essentially, what we do is work with local businesses across service categories, whether it's eating out, food and beverage, health and fitness, travel, entertainment, so on, and bring them online so as to allow consumers to discover those merchants, transact on the platform, and save money in the process. I've been an internet entrepreneur now for 8 years. I've been very fortunate to witness the absolute transformation of what the internet industry has gone through in this country. Now a little bit through its turmoil phase as well, but that's part of growing pain. And I'm particularly very passionate about organization building. I have had the privilege of working with very smart professionals, and I believe that the true merit of starting a company is not so much to have a cool office or to grow business or to raise funding or to get press, but to truly build an organization where people love to come to work. And that takes very high level of emotional and physical labor. It's not easy, as all of you will recognize. I'm not an HR professional by any measure. In fact, anecdote, Nearby spent almost 1.5 years trying to find a head of HR. I have personally interviewed 73 extremely talented professionals, very capable in their own right, but felt that they were not reflective of what we want to build. So I am the head of HR for Nearby, and I believe I'm the best head of HR because I don't know HR. And I think I don't make this, of course, with all due respect to all of you. The fact is that we're dealing with humans. We're not dealing with processes. We're not dealing with systems. We're not dealing with technology. We're dealing with just human psychology here. And everything that you have, of course, heard and seen so far in the day will always, at the end of it, boil down to how do you make the individual feel at the end of every exercise. Hiring, particularly at Nearby, is extremely critical. To give you a sense, we are about 280 people spread across 12 cities in the country. So it's a demographically split organization. In the last 2 years, we have hired close to about 300 people. And the total money that we have spent in hiring these 300 people, I got this number last evening, is 783 rupees, which was only for reimbursements for some food. That's it. We've never engaged any consultant. We've never worked with any technology portal. We only have 2 recruiters, and they have pulled off 300 people that have been hired. The voluntary attrition in the company is 6%. We are top 50 great places to work in this country. And everything that we have done is reflective of a very strong foundation that we have built that I'm particularly fond of. And what I wanted to do in this session was share some very fundamental but practical ideas that we have implemented there at Nearby, which again tread on the fact that it's humans that we're dealing with, don't have to complicate things, make it very simple, and how we've gone through it. But the most important thing that we started with is when I looked at hiring and when I spoke with HR professionals, almost all of the recruiters felt, for some reason, that hiring is all about filling in vacancies. And the minute a candidate joins and fills in their form and is assigned the email ID and the laptop and a desk, their job's over. And I didn't want to think of us as that way. I felt that was a very stupid, very parochial, very narrow way of how hiring should be. So we extended it, and we said that the job of every recruiter starts from -1 month, which is, we don't even know who's going to join, but just go back -1 month, to +3 months when the individual has joined. So it's a 4-month window, and whatever we do in these 4 months has to be impeccably executed to ensure that you've done your job well. And it's fundamentally just broken into 3 things, which is not rocket science, but let me just state that up front. The first is, how do you source candidates? The second is, how do you recruit them? And the third is, how do you welcome them? So sourcing, recruiting, and welcoming. I have a very strong view on how you source candidates, but I could be very wrong in the sense that my exposure has been mid-sized companies. I've only managed as far as 560 people. That's the biggest team that I've ever managed. So I cannot be, of course, speaking to anyone who is 1,000 or thousands of people, clearly not, say, the Googles of the world and so on. But what I fundamentally believe in is sourcing has to start from the leadership view of what hiring is all about. If your CEO, your founder, your manager is not aligned to how critical the hiring sourcing process is, you will spend wasteful money and time on trying to just run after people, whether it's campus hiring, whether it's job listing portals, whether it's LinkedIn subscriptions or Naukris of the or whatever is it. You will just spend ridiculous amount of time and money in trying to create a persona that may or may not result in what we have to do. So when we started 2 years back, we asked ourselves this question: who is it that we want to source? And we created a persona. This is a very simple product management and product development principle, which is you create user personas. You actually create individuals and almost treat them as real. So we created 3 people. We gave them names. We gave them an identity. And we said, here are 3 types of individuals that we wish to have at Nearbuy. And then we went and charted where is it that these individuals spend their time. What is it that they do when they're not looking for a job? And that's the key piece. What is it that these individuals do? What is it that you and I do when we're not looking for a job? Where do we spend our time? How do we interact with the world? What is it that we say? What is the conversation that we have with ourselves, with the community outside? And we figured very clearly and not surprisingly that most of the individuals that we wish to absorb in the company are spending an insanely amount of time on social media. Whether it's Facebook, whether it's Snapchat, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's anything have you, when they're not looking for a job. And it's very important then that we create a footprint on these platforms that speaks about us as an organization, but is not selling us. How many of you have heard of this platform called Quora? Many of you. Okay, so Quora is a very simple question and answer platform. And I discovered the platform 2.5 years back. What I recognized instantly is that the quality of questions being asked on Quora were very, very high. Very intellectual audience comes in and hangs around them. It's like the elite cult group that they like to be snobbish about. So very deep questions of whether Pakistan and India should come together. What will happen if China helps Pakistan in invading India? What happens when demonetization happens? Why does Trump behave the way they do? All these sorts of questions, which are very intellectual discussions. But what I figured is a lot of the community that we wish to hire, particularly around technology, were hanging around on Quora. So then I doubled down on Quora and just wanted to see what that experience will be for 3 months. And my job was not, as the founder, to say, hey, we're recruiting for this position, come and apply. My job was to just create a footprint of what Nearbuy and me as an individual is all about. So I went in there and started answering questions. Any and every question. There were people that asked sometimes ridiculous questions. But over time, and I've been told this, I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, people now call me a Quora celebrity. I'm one of the top 20 people globally followed on Quora. And through Quora alone, in the last 2 years, we've received more than 11,000 applications through that one platform. And it's crazy how it has come to be. Because I've answered questions like, what is Ankur Warikoo's love story all about? I've answered questions like, what car does Ankur Warikoo drive? Which is the kind of weird stuff people get asked when they kind of become quasi-celebrity. But then they've also asked questions about, what's the starting salary at Nearbuy for a software development engineer 1? Where do you guys hire from? We heard that you laid off 50 people yesterday. What was that all about? And at every point of time, the only thing that we displayed was absolute, brutal honesty. Nothing else. No PR, no, oh, we apologize for any inconvenience we may have caused, which I believe is the worst crafted statement ever made in mankind. Nothing like that. Just be very direct, be very honest, and have a conversation. And when you start doing that, you create a persona which is, yes, about the individual, but also about the company that the individual represents. And at some point of time, you have to believe, if you've seen Simon Sinek's Golden Circle talk, that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And it's very critical when Candidates have two choices in front of them. One is a very well-funded startup, very well-recognized one, and so on and so forth. And another one, perhaps equally capable, but has a leadership or has a culture that has been very well established as creating the why for the organization. This is where people will go. This is where people will marry themselves into. People wish to belong. People wish to create and join communities where they feel that they are part of that. They just don't want to be clinical. And go back and you'll recognize that every single time you've not felt connected with where you were working, it wasn't because they were doing some random bad stuff. It was just you didn't feel that you belonged. And wherever you felt so, it didn't matter how big the organization was or what your designation was, you felt you belonged. We then doubled down that on LinkedIn. I started writing a lot, answering a lot of questions. We went to Facebook. We went to even Snapchat. But we went to all places that typically you wouldn't assume would be great hunting grounds for candidates. And we spent time just answering questions about who we were and what the organization is all about. Not to get them to apply, never ever have any job posting linked on there, but just clinically focused on creating an identity for ourselves where people that we wanted used to hang around with. And we started getting feedback. We started getting a lot of very encouraging feedback about, I want to work for this organization. I wish to work for a leader like this. I wish to work for a setup that says these things and is just so open about everything that's happening. We don't belittle competition. We don't tom-tom about our achievements. We're just who we are, and that worked extremely well. But this requires intense amount of work. This is not something that will happen overnight. This is also not something that will be followed by impatient people. So if you have management that's impatient, if you yourself are one, that's not going to work. This requires this emotional labor that you put in and devote every single day to make it work. And over a period of time, you'll get to a point where this clinically works for you. We run what I would call one of India's largest student internship programs. It's a program that is remotely managed and is driving close to about 680 students at any point of time across the country. There's one individual who manages these 680 students over WhatsApp. That's the entire internship program. And all of these interns have been recruited through social media, where we just said, hey, we're looking for interns, and we got tremendous amount of applicants coming through. They told us who they are. We went through a screening process that I'm going to describe, and then we've started working with them, and all of that is just remotely managed to WhatsApp. And you figure, this is one of my biggest learnings, that if you go down a route where you give enough respect to individuals for who they are, treat them as adults, they self-manage themselves. You don't need managers, you don't need hierarchies, it's just self-imposed because we like rules, but those rules are only for people who can't manage themselves. We then came to the most important part, which was about recruiting. And I'm a very strong believer, again, of what I said, people join setups where they feel that they belong. So it was very important for us to establish how do we get people to feel that they belong to this setup. You know that when someone says, oh, I'm a perfectionist and that's why I am not able to do things fast enough, that's bullshit. That's not the answer we want. The institute from where you study matters more, because they've seen that brand work for them. It doesn't matter what you did, but if you went to IIT, it's an IIT. And if you went to SRCC and Stevens, that's what it is. But the best engineers believe that the course is what matters most, which is also true, because it then doesn't matter whether you did your computer science engineering from an IIT or NIT or just a tier 2, tier 3 college, because these are just definitions we impose on the world. They're not necessarily true. A set of these 20 questions is what we ask. The best thing about these 20 questions is that it beautifully self-selects the audience. Of every 100 people that apply to Nearbuy and we send these 20 questions, only 23 people reply back, which is great. I saved 77% of companies' time because these are guys who would not even go through the pain of asking 20 questions. They believe, some of them actually take offense. They say these are too personal questions, because we ask them, how often do you get angry? Why do you get angry? How often do you get impatient? Why do you get impatient? If you were to die today, what would be the thing that you would regret the most? Do you think you're a good parent? Do you think you're a good husband, wife? Some very thought-provoking questions. We, of course, don't like one-line answers. But at the same time, it's fascinating when you read through the responses of these. And then I take this as a personal exercise that I do. You've hired the recruit or the individual, and a year down the line, when that individual is doing extremely well, you go back to the answers that they gave, and it just makes so much of sense. You can just connect the dots back so gracefully and beautifully because it was just so obvious that this individual would have done well in life, and at least in this setup. So these 20 questions and these 23 people are the ones that we send another test. So at Amazon, there is this very famous program called Bar Raiser program. Some of you may have heard of it. It's a very fascinating piece where whenever someone's hired or interviewed, they have a panel of people who are not necessarily from the function that the individual is being recruited for, and their job is to just ensure that whosoever is being taken into the Amazon culture is raising the bar of what Amazon stands for. We want to do the same thing, but it's very hard to quantify what raising the bar means. So we came up with something which is very fundamental. It was almost like a GMAT test. So it has 4 sections. It has math, it has English, it has general knowledge, and it has some psychometric tests, but they're not really graded. They're just nice questions. And every year, the entire company is made to take that test, including me. So we refresh the test, and everyone takes that test. It's an hour-long test. And we then create patterns of mean, median, and averages for functions and for levels. So we say customer service in math has scored X on 10, and engineering in English has scored X on 10, whatever that is. And we have set ourselves this goal that anyone joining Nearbuy has to score more than the average of the function they're joining on every single section. They have to. It doesn't matter where they come from. It doesn't matter how qualified they are. It doesn't matter whether they are skilled as immensely as we think them to be, until and unless they don't clear the average of the function they're joining on all the 4 sections, we will not even interview them. So of the 23 people, only about 11 cut the average, so about 50% odd. And those 11 are the ones that we meet. So we get close to about, so last month, I looked up the numbers, last month, organically, we had close to about 2,970 applications to Nearbuy. And of those, we ended up interviewing about 240 people. The number of roles open last month at Nearbuy were 2. But we just interview. We just like meeting people because we don't know whether we will find someone, and what are the odds then when they're looking for a role in life, we're also looking for someone like them. So if you get a fantastic candidate who's gone through all of this, you might as well just take them because you never know when they're going to come back to you again or whether our paths will even cross or not. So we had 240 interviews. There is a very, very critical candidate interview experience project that we run where every single one who comes in is treated with the highest level of respect because they've gone through a process. We share with them the LinkedIn profiles of whosoever will be meeting them. We give them a tour of the office. We give them some Nearbuy credits so that they can use Nearbuy for the first time in case they haven't and experience the product before they step in. We give them some nice, happy giveaways. But more importantly, we also take their feedback after the entire process is done. And we grade the interviewers, which flows back to their annual appraisal cycle. So everyone who interviews at Nearbuy has to be a certain grade, graded by the ones who were interviewed for them to be eligible for the annual appraisal process. That's just the culture that we have built. And through this process of close to about the 11 people that finally sit for the interview, we end up hiring on an average 4. So our selection rate is 4%, but we don't have to go through a lot of pain to get to this 4% because we have the power of volume. 100 people apply, 23 of them reply with those 20 set of questions, 11 of them clear the test, we meet them, and then we finally give an offer to 4 of them. Once they've joined, the first 3 months is the most critical, and we don't end the hiring process, if you will, until that happens. And that starts from me addressing the new joinees every Wednesday and telling them of why Nearby exists. Why should anyone care? Why should you get up in the morning and come to work? What is it that defines the cultural fabric of Nearby? And this is a very one-to-one open session. It ensures that everyone is inducted in a manner that is coming in directly from a senior representative. If it's a large organization, it should be so. If it's a small one, it should be the CEO or founder. And then we've deployed technology to check how they are pacing in the first 3 months. We use this product, and I'll highly encourage you to test it out, called Amber. It's by this company called Infido. Amber is a chatbot. It's a lady who supposedly represents me. She's a machine, but for the first few guys, they actually believe Amber is true, in the sense that there are some people who's like, Amber kahan baithti hai? Like, server ke andar. But what Amber does is, at regular intervals, the first day of the joinee, the first week, first fortnight, first month, second month, third month, keeps having a conversation with her. This is a normal human conversation. This is not about, oh, we apologize for any inconvenience we've caused. This is, hey, Rahul, what's up? How are you doing? Oh, I'm good. Great. How's your first week been? Oh, it's been great. All right. Is there anything you feel you wish you knew on the first day that has helped you now? No, I'm okay. I think the first day was pretty useful. All right. Do you have a view of what Nearby is all about? Do you have a sense of the vision? Yeah, I think I do, but I'd love to know more about this. All right, great. I will let Ankur know that this is something that you want to know. Anything that you want to tell Ankur? No, I'm good. Okay, in case you wish to tell him anything, but you feel uncomfortable saying so, here is an anonymous link, so you can directly send him a message. Sure, I'll check on you after 15 days. Have a great day. That's it. It's a desktop chat application. And you can set it to ask whatever question you want. It will interpret the response through artificial intelligence and will pose the next set of questions. And then, this is the remarkable part, it will draw out patterns, because that's where data becomes great. So it will tell me what are the red flags. It'll tell me or the manager that, hey, I chatted with 50 individuals in the last 1 month, and you have to speak to these 11 because I think there's something going on. They may be on the verge of quitting, or their sentiment is not so great, or their mood is not so high. And by the way, manager X is whose team has the highest share of red flag people. Or manager Y is doing a phenomenal job, or Bangalore is doing a great job, but Jaipur is where things seem a little here and there. Or customer service is terrific, but finance is where things are not great. Any cut that you want, but that is filtered through no human intervention. Because here's the thing that I genuinely believe in, as contrarian as it may sound. Humans are terrible being objective when it comes to having conversations. We all, and I include you and me in the same community now, we all believe that as HR professionals, we are trained to have conversations. We'll have these one-on-ones, and it's like, how are you feeling? And it's like, no, I'm feeling great. Okay, tell me more. Like, express words. What is the adjective that you would use? Is your manager treating you right? Is your work challenging? So on and so forth. And we think we're being objective, but we're not. We're just trying to hear what we wish to hear, or we're just trying to interpret it in the way that we think we are. Humans are best designed to act on emotions, not to interpret them. And we mistake ourselves to believe that we can have a conversation with someone who is feeling distressed and yet be objective about it, because no, that doesn't happen. So many times, I have found myself, irrespective of what I believe in, when a new individual comes in and challenges how things are done at Nearby, being defensive. And I'd be like, oh my God, I am the one being defensive. I am the one trying to justify why we're doing something when I shouldn't. I should be listening, because there's a reason why they're feeling the way they are, and let's get to that point. So what we've done is we've actually taken humans out of the equation. We've said, let machines interpret emotions. I'm predicting a world, and I was saying this at a conference yesterday, I'm predicting a world where all of culture and all of retention and all of engagement will be driven by machines. And that's not far away. That's at best 10 years from now. And here's how you would play along. Indulge me. Most of the conversations that happen in offices is on email or instant messengers. And that is a very, very strong indicator of the sentiment of the individual who's sending those messages out. If there was, and if there is an entrepreneur amongst us, please pick this up. If there was any technology that scanned through the messages of the organization, I can guarantee that they will do a far better job of predicting what is the sentiment at an individual functional or geographic level than any individual out here. And that's what companies do. What does Gmail do? It scans through our emails and serves us relevant advertising. And I'm saying turn the table around, scan through the same email, but start predicting the sentiment of what people are going through. Because that sentiment is not going to be expressed in front of you. Why is it that people in an exit interview say the things that you wanted to hear 1 month down? Why is it that during an exit interview, they're like, you know what, that manager is effed up. And you're like, how come you are saying this now when you're leaving? So it's because I'm dying, so I don't care anymore. And that is. I wrote a blog about it, and genuinely, like this is the biggest thing that I feel I can do and call myself successful is how do I get individuals to say what they say during an exit interview on a normal day? How is it that we can create a culture like that? What is it that we can do using technology or using anything that gives us a sense of how things work? So using these 3 things, which is sourcing but true emotional labor that gets in and creates an identity, that creates a sense of how is it that you will create a persona of your organization, of your leadership, and invite people in rather than fetching in. Getting down to basics of how do you recruit, which should be very, very systematic, should be in a way that is scalable, should be in a way that's reflective of the checks and balances you wish to have in the organization, and don't stop hiring until 3 months, but don't use humans to predict whether that individual is going to stay or not. Through a combination of all these 3, at least we have benefited immensely at Nearbuy to get and build an organization that we are proud of, and I hope some of these practical things were useful for you as well. Thank you so much. I'd love to address questions that you may have. This is one of the first ones, in fact, the only one. Why do you ask these 20 questions? We ask these 20 questions because these are important for us. Here are 2 data points that I would love to share with you. On the test, which is the GMAT type test, there is a 89% correlation between the performance of the individual and the scores that they had on the test. It's crazy. 89% correlation that if the individual had a high score, they'll also be a high performer down the line. We didn't expect that. These questions are just normal 9th grade questions. These are not reflective of any intelligence. They're just reflective of can a guy sit for an hour and answer these questions in a rapid pace. And these 20 questions, the cultural bit, is also equally important because we've seen, as I mentioned, we've seen that over time, people who stay are the ones whose answers we related to best. Because we use them as a form of the communication that we have during the interview process. We use them as a foundation for all the conversation that we have. And it's great. I remember this one funny thing where we asked this question, can you be an entrepreneur at work? And there was a gentleman who said yes. Says, can you explain how? Says, because in my current role, I have a side business as well. Says, great. I love the interpretation, so we'll bear this in mind, but sorry, that's not what we meant. But people take it in whatever way they want to, and it's fascinating because it just tells us what he thinks of being an entrepreneur is, which is not what our definition was. And that's being respectful of him, but also for us. Any questions that I can answer directly? Sir? How
often do you change the questions?
The 20 questions or the test? The 20 questions don't change. They have never changed because there is no right answer, so we don't risk leaking it out. The GMAT test has been leaked out several times. I don't know, like, it's almost like, oh, iska answer mil gaya hame. And so it's been leaked out, so we have to change that. But these 20 questions, I think we've only changed 3 of those questions in the last 2 years. They've remained more or less static. We like those questions. Yeah. I can share those questions now with the team so that it can be shared as well. No, so the question is, do we use any psychometric tools? We don't. I'm not a strong believer in psychometric tools because, again, it's force-fitting what humans are. I could be completely wrong, so don't take my word for it. But not at Nearbuy, we don't use any psychometric tools. 2, also because they cost.
how do you...
783 rupees, 300 people.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry.
How do you get plot? Who is good, who is bad? Is there any plot?
So yeah, we have a plotting system. One is we trust our own performance management system. It's not an annual system, but it's actually a monthly system. It's very hard on the system, but we like it that way. So every month, there is a one-on-one that the manager hands with his team, and they draw out a sense of what the goals were and how the results on those goals were, and we plot that for 12 months to get that to the point. But we correlate that back with the questions and the scores. So every 3 months, we're checking off how those score tests are pacing against the performance of the individuals and whether there are any false negatives or false positives.
We can possibly take one question or from the Slido.
Okay. I'll take the question. Sorry, which one was the question? Now, it can be seen that you don't believe in most things that the HR fraternity does. I should not be saying this in this forum, but no, I will not risk it. Here's the thing. The 73 professionals that I met, we screened 400 candidates for the head of HR, and we loved a lot of them. But somehow, they could not get out of that HR mindset. They thought of it as a department. They thought of it as, and which is why I think, and again, no offense, I think business guys moving into HR is the next new thing. It's like you were running the shop floor, now run HR for me. Because who is better than understanding what the shop floor guys feel every day than this guy? You may not know X, Y, and Z theorems. I don't have a framework. Except for Maslow's hierarchy, I don't know anything. And maybe that's not even HR. So the fact is, I just see, yes, this is a basic need. If I give him enough salary, will he be happy? Of course not. Because there are plenty of people who can top that salary up, and I'll never be able to afford that. But I need to create a culture or an organization where people feel that they belong. And that comes in. I should admit this, and I'm very proud of this, but of course, not one of my best moments. We recently had a round of layoffs, which was regretful. It was painful, but we had to. And close to about 75% of people who were laid off wrote a goodbye email to the company saying that this has been the best company that they've worked for, and if there was any way that they could come back, they would love to. This doesn't happen with people who are being laid off. We're hearing news of people who are getting laid off, and what are they doing and thinking. But these are individuals who have been told, sorry, we don't have a role for you anymore, and yet they're saying this, I understand, which is, as it is, very, very gracious of them, and we would love to come back if this was because I can find another job, I can't find another Nearbuy. And that for us is just immensely gratifying. But I just feel that somehow HR doesn't feel that way. It's always a process. Ma'am, you've been raising your hand, so I'll take your question, and that'll be the last one I'll take. Sorry.
Is Amber your HR head?
Yeah. There are two, beyond my wife, there are two women in my life. There is Amy and there is Amber. Amber is my favorite person because she helps connect with every individual out there. Amy is the one that I use for managing my entire calendar. And maybe the Google guys know this. Technology is changing this industry in ways that we have no idea about. I don't mean to scare you, but irrespective of how much experience you have, in 10 years, you most likely will not have a job. And that's not because you're not good. It's because the entire concept of work is getting destroyed as we speak. There is automation that's coming in that's completely taking away jobs. There is data that is coming in that is becoming far, far better at interpreting what people need to do than humans can. And there is decentralization happening in ways that are immensely impactful. There is no reason for you to have people on the payroll. There's no value that you bring by creating offices. I have a very strong view on why Google is the best and the crappiest company on earth. Because they've built this brilliant infrastructure and have got people addicted to it to the sense that they have a massive sense of entitlement. They believe that they deserve everything that Google does for them, including the free lunch. And the fact is, none of us have worked hard enough to be where we are. We're just an outcome of a genetic lottery. So Amber, Amy, and all those guys, we're just taking over technology in a way. So Amy, just to give you a sense, and I'm not endorsing or selling this, she manages my calendar. So if you were to meet to me, I would assign Amy. She will have a chat with you over email, understand everything that you wish to do, will set you a time, will set you a venue, will place that on my calendar, and if there are any changes or whatsoever, she corresponds in natural human language and manages my entire calendar. $24 a month. And EA is at least 10 times that much. A good one. And that's it. That's exactly what's Amber. So yeah, Amber is my head of HR. I think I should close. Very passionate about these things. I can be found on virtually all social media platforms, as is visible, but my name is Ankur Warikoo, and warikoo@gmail.com is my email address. Love to engage with all of you. If there's anything that we can help with, or the 20 questions that we can share, more than welcome. Have a great day ahead, and it was great chatting with you all.